first recite the whole verse in English and then you translate in Arabic, then the translation in English. Then inshallah you first translate the question in the meantime.
In English, of course. Yeah. She has asked about a verse from من أي سورة كانت الآية؟
سورة الإسراء. From
Surah Al-Isra, or as known as Bani Israel, and she wants to know specifically about the ru'ya, which is mentioned in this verse, which means the vision. Also about Shajara Maloona. Shajara is the tree. Maloona, it has to be the. Afwan. Shajara Maloona.
آية 58. آية 58.
No, which verse?
58.
58.
Israel is not that.
Isra, Surah Al-Isra.
It's the same thing. Isra and Isra is one of the same thing. Yes.
58 is not.
المشكلة بالأرقام بتزبطش معه امبارح نفس الشيء.
إلا بختلف
لا مش لازم
find it from there.
بختلف بأي واحد بس.
الشجرة.
نعم.
You have got the microphone?
Yes. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قلنا لك إن ربك أحاط بالناس وما جعلنا الرؤيا التي أريناك إلا فتنة للناس والشجرة الملعونة في القرآن ونخوفهم فما يزيدهم إلا طغيانا كبيرا.
Read a verse before and one after the
The one before is وما منعنا أن نرسل بالآيات إلا أن كذب بها الأولون وآتينا ثمود الناقة مبصرة فظلموا بها فما نرسل بالآيات إلا تخفيفا وإذ قلنا لك إن ربك أحاط بالناس وما جعلنا الرؤيا التي أريناك إلا فتنة للناس والشجرة الملعونة في القرآن ونخوفهم فما يزيدهم إلا طغيانا كبيرا وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس قال أسجد لمن خلقت طينا. The translation of these three verses is as follows: and nothing could hinder us from sending signs except that the former people rejected them, but this did not hinder us, and we gave Thamud the she-camel as a clean sign, but they unjustly rejected it, and we sent not signs but to warn. And call to mind when we said to thee, surely thy Lord has decreed the ruin of these people, and we made not the vision which we showed thee, but
repeat this.
And we made not the vision.
The whole translation.
And call to mind when we said to thee, surely thy Lord has decreed the ruin of this people, and we made not the vision which we showed thee, but as a trial for men, as also the tree cursed in the Quran. And we continue to warn them, but it only increases them in great transgression. And call to mind when we said to the angels, submit to Adam, and they all submitted, but Iblis did not. He said, shall I submit to one whom thou hast created of clay?
शजरत मलूना के नीचे जो कमेंट्री नोट है वो क्या है, वो रीड करें, बाकी मुसन्निफीन ने क्या माना लिया इसका. शजरत मलूना only I know they have applied it to something. Yes.
The note says the cursed tree seems to be the Jewish people who have been repeatedly mentioned in the Quran as having been cursed by God. Chapter 5, verse 14, 61, 65 and 79. Because
the dream,
the vision, yes, that's about the vision. The note says the reference here is to the vision mentioned in verse 2 of this surah. In this vision, the Holy Prophet saw himself leading all other prophets in prayers in the temple at Jerusalem, which was the Qibla of the Jews. The vision implied that in some future time, the followers of those prophets would join the fold of Islam. This is what is meant by the words, "Thy Lord has decreed the ruin of this people." The general spread of Islam would follow in the wake of the worldwide disaster of which mention has been made in verse 59.
59.
Yes, the verse 59 is وَإِن مِّن قَرْيَةٍ إِلَّا نَحْنُ مُهْلِكُوهَا قَبْلَ يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ أَوْ مُعَذِّبُوهَا عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا كَانَ ذَلِكَ فِي الْكِتَابِ مَسْطُورًا.
Right. This I wanted to hear because I remembered that in our commentary this verse is slightly differently interpreted than I would have it. So I wanted you to know exactly what the position of other Ahmadi scholars has been before this time. And it is not essential that you accept my interpretation, because this interpretation is also, as far as I know, supported by Hazrat Muslim Maud, who had a very profound knowledge of the Holy Quran. So I wanted you to hear this so that you don't consider it as disrespect from me to the previous interpretations. But the interpretations can be offered many at a time. And when you read any commentary of the Holy Quran, you will find so many different interpretations by great scholars. It does not mean that each scholar disrespects the other. So also Hazrat Muslim Maud has disagreed with the interpretations of others. So with that introduction, I am not going to comment on this verse. Read the verse concerned.
The Shajara Maloona?
Yes. No. Royakal.
Yes. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لَكَ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ أَحَاطَ بِالنَّاسِ وَمَا جَعَلْنَا الرُّؤْيَا الَّتِي أَرَيْنَاكَ إِلَّا فِتْنَةً لِلنَّاسِ وَالشَّجَرَةَ الْمَلُونَةَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ وَنُخَوِّفُهُمْ وَمَا يَزِيدُهُمْ إِلَّا طُغْيَانًا.
First of all, that roya which was shown to Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which said that Allah has completely covered the whole mankind. This, in my opinion, applies to Miraj, of course, like it has been suggested. But this applies to the station of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as a universal prophet. This is Ahata bin Nas. So practically it is not a substantial difference from the previous interpretation mentioned in the Quran. But I understand from the word Ahata, if it is not understood, then that roya would not deliver us any meaning. So two things are very clear from this verse. Number one, the journey of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was not physical, was not a bodily journey. It was a roya. So those Muslims who believe that actually he rode a horse with some wings and traveled all the way from there to Palestine and from there to heavens, this single verse is enough to reject the interpretation as false. It says what we showed you was a roya, and the roya was intended to tell you that the entire mankind would be enslaved to you. They would be brought under you. And this part is exactly, this part can be interpreted from the reference to the Anbiya, which has also, we have also been mentioned here. All the prophets of Allah prayed behind Ahmad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, during this journey at a place which did not exist there physically. The temple of Solomon was no longer there. There was no longer Al-Masjid. It had turned into a heap of rubbles. At the time of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was no mosque there to which he must have gone. So that also, that was built more than 100 years after. So that is a further proof that it was not a physical journey. If Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had travelled bodily to that place, then he should have found no mosque anywhere. It did not exist. So further proof from this verse is that it was a vision or a dream, as the Holy Quran calls it. So when you see people in dream, they're not real. They're only symbolic. So all the prophets who came, if the prophets are 124,000, they could not be accommodated anyway in that small space which is now called Masjid Aqsa. But if you say they were squeezed into very small, thin, rod-like things, there is an insult to the vision. They must have been seen by Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as full-scale human people and confined to the human shape and human size. So in Roya this can happen, not in real life. So it was a Roya, all right. And the masjid which is mentioned, not in this verse but previously, is that spiritual mosque which does not physically exist anywhere. And it is Aqsa because it was to be created later on in history. Aqsa not in terms of distance, but in terms of time, or in terms of its nature. Anything which is spiritual is beyond the human physical reach. So that is called Aqsa. Anything which has not yet happened, but which is promised to happen later, that would also be Aqsa, which is remote and distant. So this vision applies to ahata. That is the key word to the understanding of this verse. Ahata bin nas means God has encircled the whole mankind under you. At present, they do not believe you. Even this vision is causing great fitna among the people who are diseased. But it is a promise which will be fulfilled, because God has demonstrated that all the prophets are about to follow you. Though at the time of this Roya, no prophet was following him. They had all gone before. So this means the people of the prophets. Where was the any Indian prophet or any Chinese prophet or an Iranian prophet there at the time of Azza Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? None of them was there. So this means their people, their ummas. And Ahata bin Nas can now better be understood. God has so decreed that none of the followers of old people, or none of the ummas of the older people, older prophets, would be left out, and you will encircle them in one large Sharia which will apply to the entire world and entire mankind. But at present, this vision itself is causing trial for the diseased. Now, that having been said, what is the meaning of Shajara Maloona? It is, in my opinion, not applicable to the Jews alone. Shajara Maloona is an expression of the Holy Quran which applies to all such people who are uprooted from their main teaching, main divine teachings. And that Shajara Maloona is mentioned in the verse كَكَلِمَةٍ خَبِيثَةٍ كَلِمَةٌ خَبِيثَةٍ كَشَجَرَةٍ خَبِيثَةٍ. You can find out the verse. Kalimatun Khabisa is described as Shajara Maloona in fact. كَشَجَرَةٍ خَبِيثَةٍ نِشْتُصَّتْ مِنْ فَوْقِ الْأَرْضِ مَا لَهَا مِنْ قَرَارٍ. The earlier ummas have become like Shajara Khabisa. They have been uprooted from their own teachings. That is the reason why a new perfect book had to be revealed. A new law had to replace the earlier laws. That is why a perfect prophet was to be sent to bring them back to the right path and root them and turn kalima tayyiba out of kalima shajara khabisa, you know. This is the meaning of shajara khabisa, which is in the Quran. So the Holy Quran does not mention as Shajara Maloona the Jewish people. It does not mention the Jewish people as Shajara Maloona. So the word Shajara is highly important. It must be found in the Quran in the sense of Maloona. So Khabisa and Maloona are one and the same thing. I'll read. وَمَثَلُ كَلِمَةٍ خَبِيثَةٍ. This is the real verse. كَشَجَرَةٍ خَبِيثَةٍ نِشْتُصَّتْ مِنْ فَوْقِ الْأَرْضِ مَا لَهَا مِنْ قَرَارٍ. يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ويذل الله الظالمين ويفعل ما يشاء. So those people who are misled by this ruya, they are the Zaleen who are also mentioned in this. So all the people who followed other prophets of Allah at the time of Rasulullah had become like a Shajara Khabisa. And that Shajara had lost its roots and lost its touch with the Wahi of Allah. So having read this, now we turn to the previous verse. Then the meaning will become even more manifestly clear. No, kalimatan tayyiba. ألم تر كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرها في السماء. Those previous ummas, because having lost their mooring and roots, cannot bear fruit. And they cannot rise to the heavens to be able to receive revelation from God. But Kalima Tayyiba is like a shajar who is deeply rooted, like Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was. You know, the real complete meaning of this Shajara Tayyiba is Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam himself, because the description belongs to him. It says, Asluha thabitun wa farruha fi sama toti ukulaha kullahinin bi izni rabbiha wa yadribu Allahu al-amthala lin-nasi la'allahum yatadhakkarun. Now, this verse is exactly applicable to the situation of Miraj or Isra as described in that surah. Because farruha fi sama can be perfectly applied to Ahmad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because he was to rise highest of all, touching the throne of God as if. And he was the prophet who was promised that in every age, in every time, your faith will not be left without fruits from Allah, without revelation. So this is my interpretation which agrees mostly with the previous one which has been read out to you, but also adds these two new things.
أيضا بالنسبة لأقصى جاءت في سورة الروم غلبت الروم في أدنى الأرض. إذا كانت أين المعركة بين الفرس والروم هي أبعد من القدس، كيف الله سبحانه وتعالى يعتبر سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد؟
But there Adna, this means different.
أدنى قريب.
No, small. في أدنى الأرض there.
أقرب الأرض.
No, there it doesn't mean أقرب الأرض. In a small piece of land. Adna there is translated by scholars as a smaller territory. So a smaller territory has been lost by the Romans to the Persians. This also is the meaning.
الحضور أن أدنى المقصود منها هي منطقة صغيرة يعني مساحة صغيرة قد خسرت في تلك المعركة.
Comparatively less important, smaller area.
ليست لها أهمية.
أنا ظننت أن أدنى الأرض بالنسبة لمكة يعني.
No, not at all. This is supposed your translation, but not with reference to Mecca. The land nearby. Arabia is mentioned as a whole, not Mecca itself. You understand? But the translation is correct because Adna, of course, is the nearer, literal meaning. I used to understand this word as meaning insignificant. The victory is not a large and big victory. It concerns a portion of land which is not too big, which is adna in the sense of insignificant. But I'll consult the Arabic dictionary to find out if really I'm supported in this meaning by the Lughat. But here it says nearby land, which was not close to Mecca at all anyway. Nearby has been literally translated. But we know it was not at all close to Mecca. It was beyond the border of Arabia. And a territory of the Byzantine Empire was taken over by the Persians. So the word Adna has to be further investigated. Right?
Hazur, what was the number of all the prophets? All the prophets of God, what was the number in total?
It is said 124,000, supported by some traditions. Right?
Yes, I think.
Finished?
Yes, sir.
Jazakumullah. We have finished exactly on time.
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. So I hope to receive you again in these meetings. In April, sometime in April, inshallah. Huh? Okay. And you will come in larger number than this?
Inshallah.
So make the room wider to accommodate everybody. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
هكذا نأتي إلى نهاية هذه الحلقة. شكرا على حسن المتابعة والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.